Great. Thank you, Ali. And Ali Hasannia is here with us now. He's a professor at the Department of thank you, professor at the Department of Quran and Hadith Studies at Shahid University in Iran. And he's going to read, share his presentation is on religious violence to social solidarity, the need for new interpretations of Islamic texts. Floor is yours, Dr. Ali.
And thanks a lot, Sheikh Ali Salman, because for inviting me to this conference. I met you in the last two conferences in Indonesia and Pakistan, and thanks a lot for this invitation. I would like to have a good presentation here. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My presentation is about how we can have a new interpretation of Islamic text, from religious violence to social solidarity. I seek to show how diverse interpretations of religious texts, especially holy texts like the Quran, may conclude an extremist violent thought or vice versa, a modern developed thought based on solidarity, stability, prosperity, and integral relations between members of a society. I will discuss and answer the questions. The questions are how a new interpretation will theoretically and practically change an unpleasant concept, for example, religious violence, to a desirably necessary one, solidarity and social solidarity. And what is the role of modern reading or new reading of the Islamic text in providing a well-being community? Let's start to define the word solidarity and social solidarity. I think social solidarity means unity of purpose, interest, or sympathy as of a group or class that produces or is based on community of interest, objectives, and standards. Technically, it is defined as the perceived or realized organization of individuals for group survival interests or purposes may result from either external threats or internal needs. This term is basically applied in sociology and the other social sciences, as well as in philosophy and bioethics, although it is not defined clearly. According to Durkheim, in a society exhibiting mechanical solidarity, its cohesion and integration comes from the homogeneity of individuals. People feel connected through similar work, educational and religious training and lifestyle. So the next definition is related to religious solidarity and the connection between religion and solidarity. As for the role of religion in solidarity, religions display an affinity with solidarity. The history of religion illustrates a wide variety of relationship between religious ideas and solidarity interests, be it as a motive, as an aim, or as an effect. Generally, socialists differ in the role and importance of religion in social and individual senses. For example, fundamentalists like Durkheim, Max Weber, Parsons, and others emphasize the positive role of religion, while others like Karl Marx, Zomner, and Gillen believe in the negative role of religion. This group, the latter group, even say that religion is dysfunctional and sometimes will be a pretext for violence operations by its followers. Religious and other cultural institutions provide, encourage, and to a great extent require vision and visionary leaders that serve to express institutional-wide ideas, values, and purpose, which not only transcend the everyday events and issues of its members, but also give members a sense of collective identity, thus encouraging solidarity. Collectively, when within religions and cultural institutions, the ceremonial, those life events that are commemorated, and visions and visionary leaders provide the organizational glow that accounts for solidifying events. Let's talk about religious violence here, and let's talk about it. If you can see my diagram, religious violence is a term that covers a phenomenon where religion is either the subject or the object of violence behavior. In other words, it has two following meanings, which should not be interpolated: a type of violence committed by a person, group, or institution with a religious identity, and the second one is a type of violence legitimatized and sanctioned but by religion itself. In the sense, religious violence is not just a kind of violence that is committed by religious agents, but it is justified and or motivated by religious teachings. So the purpose of religious violence in both definitions is to defend the religion itself, and maybe in political sense to defend political interests and economical interests, for example, or personal interests. Three words are seen common in both meanings: religion, committer, and violence. Both definitions emphasize the act of violence by the followers, the latter basically through the religious principles and context, and the former through the committers' own understanding or interest of religion. Accordingly, the base of violent thoughts, behaviors, and deeds is either the religion itself or the committer attacker. Since all religions, especially when speaking of major religions like Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, have their own textual doctrinal precepts, the main common value of religion and followers is the text. In fact, what is basically so important to justify behaviors is the pretext. I mean, the religious text. When we talk about the pretext in religious violence, we cannot neglect the text on which the committers base their thought. So, going back and reformulating the research questions, now we should ask if the text is the main common value between religion and followers, why some believers do violent behaviors by the name of their beliefs, and why do they use religion as the basis of violence? So one may simply reply that since the religious prescriptions inside violent behaviors, so the believers follow what has been said in their theological creed, inferring from the religious text. From a social point of view or a psychological trend, primarily this answer may be correct, but it is so superficial. I think if it is correct, we should ask why there are different views on the issue of violence in a religion, such as, for example, fundamentalism, Salafism, jihadism, rationalism, modernism, esotericism, and etc. The answer should be placed, I think, according to my study and according to this study, the answer should be placed on the issue of reading a religious text methodologically, I think. In other words, what is happening by the name of religion, I mean, violence, is not because the very religion prescribes it, but because of the way of reading its text by readers or believers. Different ways of readings throughout the history of a religion concluded different understandings. Then what should be examined is to detect how a religious group read its text in this regard. In my study, I found two major ideas that may be concerned to religious violence. Some studies connect the issue of religious violence to the issue of textual or nas or literalism. We can call them literalism and esoteric tendencies of understanding religious texts. Accordingly, in the history of interpreting religious texts generally and methodologically, two main approaches have been applied by believers so far. One is tafsir and ta'awil, I mean the methodological interpretation of religious texts in order to reach the proper meaning hidden under the apparent text, maybe translated as perposivism. And the second one is nas or zahir, I mean the literal interpretation of religious texts in order to be faithful to the apparent meaning. An apparent text may be translated as literalism or textualism. The believers of ta'wil and tafsir perposivism say that any text has two layers of apparent, zahir, and hidden, batin. The apparent layer is the same, a literal translation of the text, and the hidden layer can only be reached through a methodological interpretation. In contrast, according to textualists, if we consider to the exoteric meaning of the text, we will stay true to the text, and so the meaning of the sacred text will be clear. The origin of this method would coincide with the birth of the oldest holy text. Along the history, it has been changed to other theological schools and to the modern concept of fundamentalism. That is characterized by a markedly strict literalism, textualism. Although this concept is used today more political than its religious usage, the origin of religious extremism may mostly be traced to the fundamentalist or fundamental approaches in religion. The manifestation of extremist beliefs is sometimes violent behaviors under the name of religion. Another group of studies connect this issue of religious violence to the problem of historical and hermeneutical approaches to religious texts, whose common purpose is to show the religion itself is the cause of violence by providing the believers with reasons for committing such violence. So I slip this slide, and you can see how these two ideas state that violence is incited by religion or religious text itself. So I wanted to connect and discuss about religious violence or social solidarity. Again, going back to the questions, here it should be emphasized that although all of these methods are applicable in interpreting or religious texts, since in many cases the result of interpretation contradicts what we know and what extent what expects of the pure nature of religion as well as the reality of human life as a divine nature, it seems they must be reviewed again. According to this study, if we desire to reach the core meaning of a religious text, today we need a new understanding of religion, an understanding from which not only violence is not inferred, but also pacifism, prosperity, and solidarity is prescribed instead. A rereading of the religious text is necessary to adapt the religious concepts to rational and the real world of today human. This new reading may be referred to as the new hermeneutics or modern hermeneutics, but based on the definition and theories of hermeneutics, and many methods have been changed during the history of hermeneutics. These titles, I think, also maybe may not convey a proper name. So I call it new interpretation or new reading or rereading. Okay. I wanted to show how a new interpretation will change. So to show this theory, I wanna to give you a very tangible example to show how a new interpretation will change a very invidious term of violence to a very valuable concept of solidarity in Islam. The Quranic phrase "Ashidda'u ala al-kuffar ruhama'u baynahum" in Surah Al-Fath, verse 29, is studied here as a case. The general interpretation of the verse is that the companions of the Prophet should treat each other in kindness and deal with disbelievers in anger. They are kind with their friends and hard-hearted, fighter and harsh with enemies. Sunni and Shia interprets, they interpret generally state that according to this verse, believers are defined as being harsh and violent towards the infidels and enemies. Even those who focus on the literal and grammatical structure of the text interpret this phrase as the highest level of harshness in fighting and spreading hate and enmity to infidels. In addition, even the contemporary commentators considered its harshness and severe facing with infidels. So I don't want to bring you all of these documents because time is maybe is going to over, but I wanted to say that such statements incite a big distance between believers and infidels in the field of social relations, which can be a good ground for prescribing violence in society, especially when believers refer to Muslims and infidels to others. There are undoubtedly ideological boundaries between believers and infidels, but ideological boundaries also mean behavioral boundaries. And the Holy Quran consider harshness, strictness, lack of mercy, and lack of compassion with infidels as a behavioral principle. I studied this phrase, I mean, Ashidda'u ala al-kuffar, to find the proper and real meaning of this phrase. I studied it in both textual based inquiry and historical based inquiry. According to my study that I want to discuss all of them, according to lexicographers and commentators, this word means strength and firm stability of believers against enemies, not violence and hard-hearted against infidels. If you can see this diagram, according to this study, I found that ashadda does not mean violence and harshness against others, especially infidels and enemies, but it means vice versa, and in contrast, it means to have inner firm stability, inner strength, be impenetrable against enemies, and be kindness and friendship inside the society and between ourselves, or be brother, be kind with each other. So it doesn't mean violence, but also it means a social solidarity and integration, a very good integration inside the society. Maybe if we wanted to, we wanted to support this idea, we can exemplify it of the phrase or of the word ummah in the Quran. The ummah is a very important and a key word in the Quran that according to my study, ummah in the Quran means all of the community in the Muslim world. It doesn't mean that only Muslims, but includes all members of this community, maybe Jews, maybe Christians, maybe pagans and other people inside the community, community. In this way, all individuals have a common goal and try to reach a social cohesion, integration, and solidarity. In other words, religion is the deepest, I think, truest and most enduring thing leading to internal social solidarity. Another example maybe goes back to the biographical study of Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, and also maybe all of these historical evidences can support this idea. Therefore, I think maybe Islam, if I conclude my study according to studying the phrase ashadda and ummah, and maybe other phrases like, for example, tolerance, that I delivered another presentation in the last conference in Indonesia. I think violence is not as a result of the prescriptions of a religion, but is dependent on the way of reading its text by readers. Then what should be examined is to detect how a religious group read a religious text. The different methods are applicable in interpreting a religious text, since in many cases the result of interpretation contradicts what we know and what we expect of the pure nature of religion, as well as the reality of human life as a divine nature. It seems they must be reviewed again. If we desire to reach the core meaning of a religious text, today we need a new understanding of religion, an understanding from which not only violence is not inferred, but also pacifism and prosperity and solidarity is prescribed instead. So, can you hear me? The voice is
yes,
okay?
we have to close now. Ali Hasni, can you conclude, please?
Okay, I conclude. So, for example, concerning the Quranic phrase, of literal and historical proves that it means solidarity, integration, and firmness in Islamic society, not harshness and cruelty, as most scholars said. The Quranic word ummah also shows that a religion can collect billions of people and guide them towards a single goal according to divine teachings. In this way, all individuals have a common goal. So Islam is the religion, is the last statement. Islam is the religion of mercy, peace, kindness, and friendship. How can one attribute violence to this religion just only because he or she interprets a single verse without a thorough look at the Quran and supporting indicators? Therefore, as showed, if religious texts, especially in problematical cases, are reread, some very hateful and anti-human rights phrases like religious violence will be changed to very pleasant and prospering concept like social solidarity. Sorry, that's it.
Thank you so much, Ali Hasannia.